Hello and welcome to day 104 of the Not Alone Today chronological Bible reading plan. Today we'll be reading 2 Samuel 15, Psalm 3, 2 Samuel 16, both from verse 1 to 14, and then Psalm 7, using the New King James Version.
2 Samuel 15. After this, it happened that Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses, and 50 men to run before him. Now Absalom would rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. So it was, whenever anyone who had a lawsuit came to the king for a decision, that Absalom would call to him and say, "What city are you from?" And he would say, "Your servant is from such and such a tribe of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your case is good and right, but there is no deputy of the king to hear you." Moreover, Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were made a judge in the land, and everyone who has any suit or case would come to me. Then I will give him justice." And so it was, whenever anyone came near to bow down to him, that he would put out his hand and take him and kiss him. In this manner, Absalom acted toward all Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel.
Now it came to pass after 40 days that Absalom said to the king, "Please, let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I made to the Lord. For your servant took a vow while I dwelt in Geshur in Syria, saying, if the Lord indeed brings me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord."
And the king said to him, "Go in peace." So he arose and went to Hebron.
Then Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron." And with Absalom went 200 men invited from Jerusalem, and they went along innocently and did not know anything. Then Absalom sent for Ahithophel the Gileonite, David's counselor from his city, from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices. And the conspiracy grew strong, for the people with Absalom continually increased in number.
Now a messenger came to David, saying, "The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom."
So David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, "Arise and let us flee, or we shall not escape from Absalom. Make haste to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring disaster upon us, and strike the city with the edge of the sword."
And the king's servant said to the king, "We are your servants, ready to do whatever my lord the king commands." Then the king went out with all his household after him. But the king left 10 women, concubines, to keep the house. And the king went out with all the people after him, and stopped at the outskirts. Then all his servants passed before him, and all the Cherethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men who had followed him from Gath, passed before the king.
Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why are you also going along with us? Return and remain with the king, for you are a foreigner and also an exile from your own place. In fact, you came only yesterday. Should I make you wander up and down with us today, since I go I know not where? Return and take your brethren back. Mercy and truth be with you."
But Ittai answered the king and said, "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, surely in whatever place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also your servants will be."
So David said to Ittai, "Go and cross over." Then Ittai the Gittite and all his men and all the little ones who were with him crossed over. And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over the brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over toward the way of the wilderness.
There was Zadok also, and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had finished crossing over from the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and show me both it and his dwelling place. But if he says thus, I have no delight in you, here I am, let him do to me as seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Are you not a seer? Return to the city in peace, and your 2 sons with you, Ahimaaz your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait in the plains of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me." Therefore Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there.
So David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives, and wept as he went up. And he had his head covered and went barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up, weeping as they went up. Then someone told David, saying, "Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom." And David said, "O Lord, I pray, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness."
Now it happened, when David had come to the top of the mountain where he worshipped God, there was Hushai the Archite coming to meet him with his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, "If you go on with me, then you will become a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant, O king, as I was your father's servant previously, so I will now also be your servant,' then you may defeat the counsel of Ahithophel for me. And do you not have Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there? Therefore it will be that whatever you hear from the king's house, you shall tell to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Indeed, they have there with them their 2 sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son, and by them you shall send me everything you hear."
So Hushai, David's friend, went into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem.
Psalm 3. A psalm of David when he fled from Absalom his son. Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. Many are they who rise up against me. Many are they who say of me, "There is no help for him in God."
But you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory, and the one who lifts up my head. I cried to the Lord with my voice, and he heard me from his holy hill.
I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around.
Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheekbone. You have broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing is upon your people.
2 Samuel chapter 16, from verse 1 to 14. When David was a little past the top of the mountain, there was Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, who met with a couple of saddled donkeys, and on them 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a skin of wine. And the king said to Ziba, "What do you mean to do with these?"
So Ziba said, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on, the bread and summer fruits for the young men to eat, and the wine for those who are faint in the wilderness to drink."
Then the king said, "And where is your master's son?"
And Ziba said to the king, "Indeed, he is staying in Jerusalem, for he said, 'Today the house of Israel will restore the kingdom of my father to me.'"
So the king said to Ziba, "Here, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is yours."
And Ziba said, "I humbly bow before you, that I may find favor in your sight, my lord, O king."
Now when King David came to Bahurim, there was a man from the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera, coming from there. He came out cursing continuously as he came, and he threw stones at David and at all the servants of King David. And all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. Also, Shimei said thus when he cursed, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you rogue. The Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned, and the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom your son. So now you are caught in your own evil, because you are a bloodthirsty man."
Then Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said to the king, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please, let me go over and take off his head."
But the king said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord has said to him, 'Curse David.' Who then shall say, 'Why have you done so?'"
And David said to Abishai and all his servants, "See how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life. How much more may this Benjamite? Let him alone, and let him curse, for so the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look upon my affliction, and the Lord will repay me with good for his cursing this day. And David and his men went along the road. Shimei went along the hillside opposite him and cursed as he went, threw stones at him and kicked up dust. Now the king and all the people who were with him became weary, so they refreshed themselves there.
Psalm 7, a meditation of David, which is sung to the Lord concerning the words of Cush, a Benjamite. O Lord my God, in you I put my trust. Save me from all those who persecute me, and deliver me lest they tear me like a lion, rending me in pieces while there is none to deliver.
O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there is iniquity in my hands, if I have repaid evil to him who was at peace with me, or have plundered my enemy without cause, let the enemy pursue me and overtake me. Yes, let him trample my life to the earth and lay my honor in the dust.
Arise, O Lord, in your anger. Lift yourself up because of the rage of my enemies. Rise up for me to the judgment you have commanded, so the congregation of the peoples shall surround you. For their sakes, therefore, return on high. The Lord shall judge the peoples. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness, and according to my integrity within me.
Oh, let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just. For the righteous God tests the hearts and minds. My defense is of God, who saves the upright in heart.
God is a just judge, and God is angry with the wicked every day. If he does not turn back, he will sharpen his sword. He bends his bow and makes it ready. He also prepares for himself instruments of death. He makes his arrows into fiery shafts.
Behold, the wicked brings forth iniquity. Yes, he conceives trouble and brings forth falsehood. He made a pit and dug it out, and has fallen into the ditch which he made. His trouble shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealing shall come down on his own crown.
I will praise the Lord according to his righteousness, and will sing praise to the name of the Lord Most High. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Just a quick recap of the 4 chapters we've read, 3.5. In chapter 15, we read about Absalom's treason, how that he sneakily made himself king, so much that David and his servants had to flee from where they were into the wilderness. And also in this chapter, we read of a person called Ahithophel, in that the person is one of the conspirators that was with Absalom, and is one of the people who was advising Absalom. And when David knew of this, he prayed that God would turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. And somehow, after that prayer, God provided a way into Absalom's inner circle with a person called Hushai the Archite. Then in Psalm 3, we read about David's plea to God to help him. It was mostly how that he doesn't have any respite and he wants one. And then in 2 Samuel chapter 16, 1-14, we read about how Ziba betrayed Mephibosheth. He went to King David and said, "Oh, Mephibosheth is trying to take the kingdom away from him." So much that David then said to Ziba that all that belongs to Mephibosheth is now his. And then Ziba just said, "I humbly bow before you that I may find favor in your sight." And in this same chapter, we read about Shimei's curses upon David, how that he started throwing stones, kicking up dust, and cursing David. That one of the servants said, "Give me this man and I will take off his head." But David said, "Actually, leave him alone. He's just saying what God has ordered him to do, and let him just say what he wants to say." And David said maybe by Shimei raining this curse on him, God would help him find respite from his affliction, from David's affliction. And then lastly in Psalm 7, we read again how David railed at what's going on with him and asked God for help. And firstly, he put it to God to say that if indeed he has done these bad things people were saying he has done, then definitely he should be struck and trampled on the earth. But if he hasn't, that God should judge him according to his righteousness. And then at the end of that psalm, we saw how that he said he would sing praises to God. So what stood out to you in 2 Samuel chapter 15?
What stood out to me is Absalom's very weird tactic of stealing the hearts of the men of Israel. And it shows on the one hand how fickle our hearts can be, how easily our hearts can be stolen on the one hand. And on the other hand as well, again, part of the questions we were having about this character called Absalom and David's way of responding to him. The David that we knew, if someone tried this, would go on to fight, Instead, he started running for his life for his son. It just seems like an off script in a manner of speaking.
The same son he claims to long for.
The same son he claims to long for, exactly. But yeah, of course, again, the story is still in progress. So we'll see how that goes. But it reminds me of the scripture that says in Proverbs 4:23, guard your hearts with all diligence. We don't want to be swayed by sweet-sounding nonsenses. We don't want to be lured by people that knows exactly what to say that will appeal to our conscience and thus steal our hearts. Our heart is where our lives flow from, and we want to guard it with all diligence.
True. I like Ushai's double agent's role. However, he's working for Absalom and at the same time feeding information to David.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me curious, like, how do we stem conspiracy in the bud? Do we let it grow and fester? Or does it need to be addressed?
In this case, David's approach is to trust God's sovereignty, not just only in, fleeing from Absalom, but also even in the subsequent account of the Shimei that was cursing him and all that. Of course, he would eventually still mete out judgment against Shimei on his deathbed. He would instruct Solomon to make sure he deals with the guy, but which is another story for another day. But at the moment, it felt like David's choice was to just trust that God is truly in charge. He exalts one, he pulls down the other, and that nothing could really come to stay except God says yes to it.
True. Okay. Well, another thing that stood out to me was how the people crossed towards the way of the wilderness. As though they're making that sojourn again. All over again. And the last thing that stood out to me was Ittai's response to David when David told him to go back. It sounded almost similar to what Ruth said to Naomi from verse 19. David said, should I make you wander up and down with us today? Since I go, I know not where. Return and take your brethren back. Mercy and truth be with you. But Ittai replied and said, as the Lord lives, in whatever place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also your servants will be. And then David told him to cross over. And whilst we were reading that, all I could hear was how Ruth also put the same thing to Naomi to say, yes, I might be a foreigner, but your God will be my God. Yeah.
Psalm 3?
Yeah, Psalm 3. Whilst we were reading it, I could just hear the song, for thou, O Lord, art a shield for me.
My glory and the lifter of my head.
Yes, that stood out to me.
That's the same thing that stood out to me. And indeed, God is the one who lifts up our head. God is the one who is our glory. And in him, we have divine security and sustenance.
And then in chapter 16, the 14 verses that we read, what stood out to me was Ziba's deception. And also the danger of a one-sided story, in that David rushed to make decision based on what Ziba said. Nowhere did he say, oh, I don't believe Mephibosheth would do this, or send a servant to Mephibosheth to state his case. Maybe it's the overwhelmingness of him being on the run, his son taking his kingdom from him. That was why he was quick to believe Ziba, that Ziba is planning to take the country and the kingdom from David. That's why I believed him. But I just thought, wow, it's not really good to hear one side of the story and make a decision on that. If you need to make any judgment or any decision, it's best to have both sides put out their case and then decide on what's before you.
Exactly. It's the same thing that stood out to me. Of course, we know that it's a false accusation because eventually there would be an opportunity to hear back from Mephibosheth when we get to chapter 19, and then we'll see the full account. And even then, David will not revert this command that he has given to Ziba to hand over the things that belongs to Mephibosheth to him. Rather, I think he would say that they should share it amongst themselves, which is, again, just a very questionable way to conclude the whole narrative. But yeah.
And what stood out to me also in that chapter is Shimei's cursing David. And it's read in a commentary now that Shimei was part of Saul's family.
He's a Benjamite.
You know, earlier, Kola, you were saying how that David's reaction was him waiting on God's providence. But isn't it bad for you to just let someone curse you and not revert it or refute it? It's because it would stick, isn't it?
The Bible says, curse causeless shall not stand. In other words, if the curse that someone is raining on you has no basis, you haven't done anything to warrant it, then it won't stand. If anything, it will go back to them. And that is sort of the language of the psalm that David wrote in that context, which is Psalm 7 that we also read. And he will go back to say, let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end.
Also, it did refute it.
Yeah, so it did refute it.
But just not at the moment.
Exactly.
I see.
And so, yeah, it's quite an interesting way. What is just striking to me is the dissonance or disconnect between what David is doing here, making it sound like, I'm just handing everything to God. Vengeance is God's. And then instructing Solomon to say, remember that guy that cursed me? Ensure that his head does not stay on his neck.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I can't wait to get to that part and say, like, Brother David, what's going on here? If you want to let God fight for you, let him fight. Which one is let him fight today so that I can have my child fight for me tomorrow? But yeah, just interesting.
It is. So that brings us to the end of our review. We hope this has blessed you. Tomorrow we'll be moving on to the rest of chapter 16 up until chapter 20.
But till then, just remember,
you're not alone.
Today.
God bless you.